Hey everybody, just wanted to check back in with you. And I was working on a task today and then read about this particular thing that kind of just happened to me, and that's kind of how God works. So I bought some contact paper to cover up these drawers that were in one of my bathroom cabinets. And I suspected that the drawers were filled with remnants from drug usage from my fiance. And in the whole thing of having my entire apartment redone and everything else, certain items were, deemed usable again, and other items were completely, renovated and, new things brought in. But certain things like drawers were just put back in. And because I had all these little plastic containers that were sorting all my items in, my drawers that were like, my makeup drawer, hair drawer, etc. All of those little plastic containers were actually covering the actual drawer itself. And as I prepare for Passover and I'm doing a deep cleaning of my home, I'm like, what is this? And so I discovered that all of my drawers were lined with drug remnants. So my fiance, Eric, was burning drugs inside of the drawers while he sat on the toilet. So he's sitting on the toilet, he pulls out the drawer, he burns drugs, and then he had all because I had all my makeup and stuff, he would take all those plastic containers, put them on the counter, and then after he burned his drugs, he put all my plastic containers back inside the drawer, and I'm like, not thinking that there's anything going on. So this is what drug addicts do. They hide their materials, and they're doing it in ways that a normal person that doesn't do drugs, like I'm not a drug user, so I'm not going to think about ways that I can hide using my drugs because I don't have drugs. So here I am looking at these drawers as I prepare for Passover. I'm cleaning my home and I'm like, oh my gosh, these drawers are covered in drug residue. So I did my best to clean them. And yes, I did use cleaning gloves, like rubber gloves. And after I scrubbed everything to the best that I could, I then prepared the drawer and cut contact paper to then lay that inside the drawer as a liner. So my point is that in terms of God and in terms of his victory, we're going to see victories, and sometimes they're going to come way past the time. And it's just to, again, show that all the while, this person, this narcissist, this drug addict, this man that I fell in love with, who presented a completely different persona of who he was to me, was deceiving me. And here we are 4 years later, as I'm still recovering from the damage of what he did to my home and all of my belongings. And I'm still finding yet more evidence of his drug usage and what he did and how he did it. Because again, because I'm not a drug user, I don't think of how I'm going to hide my drugs because that's not part of my reality. But then when you find this is how somebody else, hides their drug usage, it's just another way that we have to be even more eyes open, ears open, paying attention and looking for these types of evidence. So I was reading today's verse, which is in Proverbs 26. And I'm just going to come down to, here it is. Okay, verse 17. He that passes by and meddles with strife belongs not to him, is like one that takes a dog by the ears. Kind of like, if you're pulling a dog's ears, dogs don't like their ears pulled. So you're creating mischief. As a madman who casts firebrand arrows and death, so is the man that deceives his neighbor and says, am I not in sport? Which again, reminds me that one of Eric's favorite sayings was, I was only joking. Like, you're so serious. Why do you take things so seriously? Come on. Like, I was only joking. And meanwhile, he was deceiving his neighbor. Like, I was his neighbor. I was his life partner. And here I am feeding in empowerment and positivity and love and kindness. And meanwhile, behind my back, he's sowing in fire and arrows and death and literally burning drugs in my drawers where I am putting on my makeup onto my face. And in that same drawer is where he is burning drugs. The same drawer that I'm pulling out my brushes to brush my hair is the same drawer that he's burning drugs. Where no wood is, there the fire goes out. So where there is no talebearer, the strife ceases. And what that means is that the whole time, drug addicts, narcissists, they're manipulators, they're liars. And so there's no wood, the fire goes out, meaning he's no longer living. He's no longer creating mischief in my life. And so the fire goes out. And when the fire goes out, then it's not hidden anymore. And then God reveals to me, hey, this is where he was burning his drugs. So where there's no talebearer, meaning Eric was the talebearer. He was constantly making up stories about what his false reality was. And I was believing his false reality because his storytelling was so amazing. Okay. But the strife ceases, meaning I'm not currently under his wickedness. I'm not under that anymore. And when God reveals yet another piece of evidence and proof saying, hey, this is what he was doing to you. When you were believing that he was with you and for you, he was actually against you. And as coals are to burning coals and wood to the fire, so is a contentious man to kindle strife. Now, the whole point is anybody who's an active drug user who is lying and saying that they're in recovery for 32 years and that they're clean and sober, not only are they doing harm to themselves, but they're doing harm to the people that love them, to their friends, to everybody around them, to people that they work with, because that person that is being the liar, the talebearer, the contentious man, they are causing strife in every single avenue of their life for themselves and for everybody around them. And until they come to terms with it, and in some cases they don't. For Eric died. The words of a talebearer are as wounds, and they go down in the innermost parts of the belly. And again, when you become one flesh with another person, whatever they're doing to themselves, you're going to feel it. You're going to feel it in your body. And there's going to be remnants of what they do to themselves to you if you are, quote, one flesh. And if you are, quote, both having sex with one another in a, quote, committed relationship. And in my case, I was engaged and I had a commitment to marriage. And I thought that that was, quote, under God correct, which it was not. So again, as we are schooled by the Lord and he corrects us and reproaches us and says, hey, you were under the wrong idea. So I'm not having sex with anybody. I have no desire to have sex with anybody. And unless I'm getting married, there is no sex before marriage. I understand what God's law is. So, but the wounds go into the belly. And since all of this, like before I was in a relationship with Eric, I did not have a protruding belly. I did not have any problems with managing, getting rid of my waist, like going to the bathroom or anything. I didn't have those problems. But through that whole relationship, he destroyed me mentally, emotionally, and physically. And I have been paying the consequence of those strifes that were against me personally and against my body. And I have been doing all kinds of cleansing and prayer and fasting and things to detox my body from all of these chemicals that he was putting into my environment, into my smoothies, because he was personally poisoning me. And it takes time to get all those poisons out. Burning lips and a wicked heart are like a potsherd covered with silver dross. He that hates dissembles with his lips and lays upon deceit within him. When he speaks fair, believe him not. For there are 7 abominations in his heart, whose hatred is covered by deceit. His wickedness shall be showed before the whole congregation. So here we are, 4 years later after his death. And that means, I was 4 years with him and then now 4 years after his death. So here we are 8 years later, and God is showing me what was hidden, what he was doing in my home, in my apartment, in my drawers, in my makeup, he was literally burning drugs in my makeup drawer. He was burning drugs in my hair drawer. And all of those things were infecting me and my environment. And it says that his wickedness shall be showed before the whole congregation. So here I am on social media sharing to the whole world what he did. And I'm sharing it not to make him look bad. That's not my point. My point is I am sure that there is some woman out there who is noticing as she cleans her home, there are weird, like, residues all over her countertops, all over her drawers, and she doesn't know what it is. And she's tried all these cleaning products to wipe away these things that won't get off her counters, that won't get off her drawers. And, you know, I had cut line marks from Eric X-Acto blades on my desk, on my countertops. Any surface has drug marks on it. Burn marks and cut marks from him cutting drugs. And that whole thing is I'm like saying to other people that are out there, open your eyes, pay attention, look at what's really happening in your environment. And when you see something that looks odd or it doesn't seem right, you need to have, you know, a come to Jesus meeting with yourself and realize that this person that you supposedly love, that supposedly loves you, is a lion to you. He is a liar. He is a manipulator. And the devil comes only to lie, kill, steal, and destroy. And that means destroy your personal property. That means destroy your emotions, destroy your joy, destroy your finances. And all of these things are things that I am still working to recover from. It doesn't just snap your fingers and everything is wonderful and perfect again. It takes time to fight these battles, which then brings me to what I was reading earlier, which was in Judges. And in Judges, this is an Old Testament. I was reading about all these battles today of, you know, how God would say, you know, Gideon, go here and you're going to take this many men. And then he takes the men and then he says, send these men back. And you're like, why would God send away thousands of men that are able to fight and he only wants 300 men? Because God's God and God wants you to obey him. And so what I'm getting at is we all have battles to fight. Okay. And sometimes when we're fighting these battles, we want to be one and done with it. We want to deal with something one time and we want to be like, okay, it's done. I've covered everything. I've gotten out every drug paraphernalia. We're done. But the reality is spirits, and we're talking evil spirits, and we're talking about different breeds of people, hybrid peoples, people that do these things, people that are drug addicts and alcoholics and narcissists. They have a preponderancy to keep going back more. Okay. And they're hiding that from naive, non-suspecting, good-hearted women that think that the man in their life is actually this man who has presented himself to be a certain way, when in reality, he's not. So in Judges, all these battles are like, you know, God says, go and, you know, go claim the land, go take the land. And right now I'm taking the land of my cabinet space that was destroyed by these, quote, giants, the alcoholic, addict, narcissist, you know, sexual immorality person that was destroying my life and ruining my assets and making my life amok. And I am now going in, seeing the damage, and I'm going, I don't want to live with this thing, but I am still in this apartment and I am still living in this location and I want to make my home a home again. So what can I do? First of all, I'm going to clean the space. I'm going to, you know, prepare the space. I'm going to get the right materials. In this case, a drawer liner, contact paper to set the drawer. And then I'm going to, you know, declare that I'm taking over my property and my space again. And these evil spirits do not have a place in my home. There will be no more burning of drugs and cutting of drugs on my furniture, on my tabletops, on my counters, in my drawers, behind whatever is hidden. What I'm saying is I am now claiming and taking responsibility and claiming my authority in the Lord, in Jesus, and saying, hey, we're done. This is my land and I'm reclaiming it. And I encourage you that sometimes it's a drawer. Sometimes, it's an entire room. It's an apartment. It's a house that you have allowed the enemy, the devil, to claim stake in your space. You've allowed the clutter. You've allowed the drug addict to claim his space in your space. Whether you knew about it or not, you've allowed it at some point. And this is the same problem that God had with the children of Israel, the Israelites. They claimed the promised land. All those 12 tribes claimed their land. But God told them, you have to drive out those enemies. You have to drive out those people that are worshiping other gods. And they didn't do it. They didn't do it. They weren't following the 10 Commandments. They weren't listening to what God said. And that is why their enemies took hold of them and they were in captivity. And then they cried out to the Lord, we sinned, please help us. And then God said, okay, I'll help you, but you've got to restore the 10 Commandments. You've got to break down their altars to other gods. So here's the bottom line. This is the truth. And when you read the truth and you get into it and God opens it up to you, you are going to have confirmation and you are going to be directed and redirected. And God's going to say, go into your bathroom, and you're going to go stand there. And he's going to say, open up the drawer, and you're going to open up the drawer. Take everything out of the drawer. And you're like, God, I'm not really in the mood to do makeup right now. And you take everything out of the drawer. And guess what? He's showing you. God is showing you. The Holy Spirit is showing you. That man that you let into your home that you thought was a good guy was not a good guy. He was not a godly man. He was a destroyer. He was a liar. He was a thief. He was killing everything in this environment. And he meant to kill you and to destroy everything that you had and to take everything that you had and make it his own. And those demons that came along with him are still lingering in the space trying to say, hey, we're here, we're going to bother you. But you have to take control over your environment. And you need to tell the devil to go take a hike. And you need to give him his eviction papers. And you need to do something physically to reclaim that land, reclaim that space. And it's not just with the drugs. It's not just with getting your space in order. It's telling clutter no more. It's making decisions about how you want to live and how you're going to thrive. And a lot of that is by living a more minimalist life. And that is just true. It just is. So get rid of all this extra clutter that you don't need. Give it to someone, sell it, and reclaim your space and dedicate that space to be a sanctuary for the Lord, where his presence can come upon you, in you, on you, around you, in your environment, so that the Lord can be glorified and sanctified. Have a good one.